Welcome to Startup Dugout by Dell Technologies, a podcast series where we talk to entrepreneurs from India's biggest tech startups to go back to that time when. That time when you needed allies. That time when you needed sound advice and good mentors. That time when you were looking for the right tech partners who can accelerate growth. I'm Sairee Chahal, your host for the series. I'm a serial entrepreneur, angel investor, and evangelist for women's internet. I currently run Shiro's and Mahila Money to create internet ecosystems for women, helping them with employment, entrepreneurship, and access to capital. Through this show, we are going to discover how these industry leaders respond to challenges in their entrepreneurial journeys, with their startups coming out stronger than ever, and how initiatives like Dell for Startups empower companies through innovative technology, strategic guidance, proven practical capabilities, and expert consulting assistance. In this episode, I speak with Mandeep Manocha, the co-founder and CEO of Cashify, a re-commerce marketplace. Officially founded in 2013, Cashify buys old electronic goods from consumers and resells them as refurbished devices. This way, the company contributes to the circular economy, reduces electronic waste and environmental damage, while increasing access to quality smartphones and other electronic devices at affordable prices. Mandeep's entrepreneurial journey began with him building a waste management company, a fitting predecessor to what Cashify is today. Mandeep and I discuss what it's like adapting a business idea through changing times, working in a trust deficit market, and coping with external factors like the recession or demonetization. So, Mandeep, let me ask you a question that's been on my mind. We're in 2022, everyone's talking about a down market, and of course, some of us have seen these cycles before in varying proportions. And you are an entrepreneur who started in recession, and 2008, 2009, probably one of the hardest we have seen so far. Tell us, what are things an entrepreneur needs to know when they start up in a recession? What are the lessons you took along the way?
This question really will take me back through the memory lane. It's been a long time. But I think, the first thought that come to my mind is, it is hard to convince people around you that why are you taking this call. Of course, it's a recession, but people still expect you to, get a good job because they think that you are the better one of the lot. But I can tell you, both me and my co-founders didn't get a job at that time. So the first thing that you have to do is, you have to convince your parents, you have to convince your friends why you're doing this. A lot of people say that, great companies have been, started in recession times. But one thing that people don't tell you is that it's really hard to find early believers during recession. Of course, it's true for any time, but even in the times of recession, everybody's fighting their own battles. Everyone is down. Everyone is in survival mode. So getting the first customer, getting the first backers, it's really, really tough. But what is important is, you need to just realize that this recession is going to get over at some point. So you have to give yourself time. Maybe when you start in recession, you may have to budget another year or two. But I think the good thing is that you can only go up from there. You are at the worst or the bottom of your career at that time. So all you can think of is just going up, and that takes off a lot of load from your head. When you realize that you have nothing to lose more, then you can only think of, I can just go up from here. So that is one. Yeah, it's liberating. So, thankfully we were in a situation where we had to start in a recession because we had no other option. But I think it worked out pretty well for us. And I think even now that, there are talks of recession, I'm sure a lot of people will start off thinking or leaving their jobs, or would be forced to leave their jobs. But it's not the end. I mean, we have seen these cycles every 8-10 years. And, things change. We always, come back to the top. So it's great times for people who want to start.
Wonderful and super inspiring. And I guess good companies will continue to come out of
Absolutely.
recessions.
Absolutely.
Uh, so you're a thesis based entrepreneur. You probably work in a space that's one of the most challenging issues of our time: climate change, environment, something that matters to all of us.
Yeah.
And being a mission driven company myself, I know what it takes. It's a hard road to one find a balance between commercial success and long term vision. And of course, I think there's always a trade off, staring at you between
Yeah.
keeping your purpose and keeping your commercial success in line.
Yeah. Yeah.
How did you navigate that? And of course, I think before Cashify, this idea already existed, right? I think Cashify is a germination of a lot of things that you probably walked through before this happened. So
Yeah.
walk us through the journey a little more, and how did you get attracted to the whole idea of doing this?
So I think starting on, we were very clear that we want to build something in waste management. Now, if you ask me why did this idea germinate in your head, it was a very unsexy field. Not many people have been talking about it. Back in 2008-9, it was still very, very nascent where people would, even think about it. My background goes where I've seen my parents or my family work in a recycling kind of setup. So I've spent my, summer holidays just in scrapyards figuring out which metal is what. Not to boast, if you give me 5 metals, I can identify just by picking them up, that this is iron, this is copper, this is magnesium. So that is where I had an initial exposure to what recycling is. And when I graduated, I felt that uh, nowhere in the world there is a industry or there is a setup which can boast that we are the recycling hub for the world. There are IT hubs for the world. India is the back end when it comes to call centers, etc. for the longest time. China has been the manufacturing hub for the world, but there was no recycling hub in the world. So that is where we started the idea that can we build the largest recycling setup anywhere in the world, which could encompass everything: solid waste, electronic waste, etc. And that is how we felt that let's start. We wanted to start with solid waste because that is something that comes very naturally to all of us. We see solid waste every day. There's a dabba that goes out of our house every day, right? And we generate so much waste. I mean, it's funny that if you don't take out your trash for 5 days, you'll realize how much consumerism is there in your own lives. It's mind-boggling. So we wanted to solve for it, and we felt that there is a lot of resource which just go live waste. We've all seen large, dumping grounds in and outside of our cities, and it's just a problem that keeps building up. There are mountains which have come at places where there was nothing like 5 years ago.
True.
So we wanted to solve for that, and we started our journey in solid waste, trying to figure out what we can do. It took us to places where we could actually see a solid waste management facility right next to a pig farm. Interestingly, the pigs would actually eat all the biodegradable waste from the solid waste, and what you would be left with something that you can actually sell. Okay, but we very soon realized it's a very regulated industry. You have to work a lot with the government to actually get those contracts. So we felt really flat initially that this is not something that we could do. Then we moved. We did one project, very interesting project with Indian Railways, where we thought, okay, if you look at any railway line when you're traveling, you see waste all across. Like when right next to the railway lines, you'll always see waste. So can we work with the railways to make sure that we clean everything? So that took us to a journey. We worked there for a few months, but then again realized a lot of red tapeism. We can't build a large company there. Finally, we chanced upon electronic waste in our research, and we felt that this is something which not a lot of people are talking about. Not everyone is doing it, and it's going to be a big problem in the future. So we picked up that one topic, one area, and delved deep into it. We started with a consulting setup where we were working with all major OEMs to build their back-end supply chain for waste management, especially electronic waste. And we were lucky to get a break with few of the largest, biggest brands in smartphones and laptops and printers to work with them to build their supply chains. So we did that for a couple of years. And then, again, entrepreneurs itch. Can we make it really large? We could not. So we shelved that. And then we moved to, an idea where we would collect scrap tires and convert them into oil. And
Oh,
that's
wow.
where my chemical engineering background, came into some kind of help. And we set up one of India's first rubber to oil pyrolysis unit in North India. And we ran that for 2 years, made that whole setup profitable. But then soon realized that if you need to scale a manufacturing setup, you have to put in capital in a proportionate manner. And do we want to do this all our lives, or we've learned whatever we had to from this setup? So we took a call that let's sell this and build something which is more digital. And this is where 2013-14 we're talking about, wherein a lot of e-commerce was happening, a lot of digital companies were coming into picture, and the scale that we could see was much, much higher, and what you could achieve or make an impact was much larger. And that is where the idea of Cashify came into existence, wherein we realized that in the recycling domain, one step before is reuse. So when you say reduce, reuse, recycle, reducing your consumption is the first step, reusing what you have is the second step, and the final frontier is recycling. We said if we can build something in reuse and make a large business out of it, let's try to build that in electronic waste domain. And interestingly, one thing that we've realized in our recycling journey was that a device is not an e-waste till the time it's lying in your drawer. It will ultimately become that. But if a BlackBerry device is lying in your drawer today, it's not e-waste today till the time you throw it. So if you could bring those assets back into the circular economy before they reach the end of life, we can actually juice out some of the usable life of that device. And given that in a country like ours where people don't have access to electronics, 50% of India is still using feature phone. If we can extend the life cycle of the product which is lying in your drawers, we can actually make it available, and there'll be huge demand. So that's how the idea of Cashify came into existence. But we've always been focused on the fundamental, that we will build something in waste management, recycling, and we are true, whatever we are building and we have our plans in the future are, governed by this initial fact that this is the space we want to be in.
Wonderful. What a journey. Stick to the purpose and make many pivots. And of course, I think digital is where a lot of our own liberation as founders lies. And
Yes.
My next question leads me to that. And of course, I think when you go digital and we're building a company that's technology backed, you need amazing partners, you need reliable partners. I know you've been a dedicated user of Dell laptops in your organization, and you've scaled
Yeah.
up the organization using some of their expertise and their products. Can you
Yeah.
talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, I think this goes back to, even our college days. There were a very few brands when it had to come to, buying a laptop. And the best differentiator was, Dell had a amazing after sales support. I remember even in college, if anything had gone bad on a laptop, you just make a call and the guy would come change the part and you were good to go. You did not have to go out and find where the next, where the service station is, wait for, 10 days for the part to come to the service station. So that is something that, was there in my mind. And when we started, it was very clear that whatever IT hardware that we want to use Dell. Because see, you don't want discontinuity in a business, and it takes away a lot of productivity and a founder's time, because initially when you're building an org, you are everyone. You are the IT guy, you are the support staff. So if somebody's laptop would break, it's your problem. You have to go out and find how do I get it repaired. So that's where Dell, we chose Dell because we knew that if anything goes wrong, it's going to be taken care of. And we always bought the extended, warranties of Dell, and it made our lives very simple. So this is just one very simple example that we, use. And since we've been using Dell from day one, we've stuck to it. And most of our IT hardware equipment that even we buy today is from Dell.
Wonderful. I think it's good to have partners you can completely rely
Absolutely.
on and you don't
Yeah.
need to worry about. This brings me to my next question, which is a little bit of a dichotomy in India. On one side, we're a country with 50% feature phones, which means everybody probably needs the product that you have for them. But at the same time, we're a high trust deficit market. People still like the idea of a new product. People still
Yeah.
like guarantees. Uh, how did you negotiate that? How did you work through that?
So in our business, trust is on the both sides. On the side where we buy used devices from people, and on the side where we sell. So let me talk about where is the trust deficit when we buy. There are a lot of C2C classified platforms where you can sell your product. Now, a lot of these, a lot of customers we realize in our surveys that don't trust who they're selling their, phone to. Where is it going to get used? The second thing is then when you're buying from a, classified platform, you don't know whether the product's going to work or not. Okay, so on the sourcing side, we had to build, a lot of education that you can sell this device to Cashify. We will come to your doorstep, pick it up, no hassle. Plus, where you're selling, and it's not going to come back and haunt you ever in your life. The second thing is people always, think about data security. That if I sell my phone to someone unknown and my data goes into wrong hands, what will happen? So we solved for trust there by telling people that, we will do a data reset in front of you when we pick up the phone. And at the same time, when we go back to our warehouse, we do a professional level data cleanup so that your data is secure. So that's on the trust side, on the sourcing side. On the demand side, you rightly pointed out that we are in a segment where every device could be different. If I keep 10 phones in front of you, it's possible that one has a dent, one does not. One has a small blemish on the screen, the other does not. And it's very difficult to solve for it from a very digital perspective. So our focus has been for the last 5 years to build the demand side in a very offline heavy fashion. So we've invested in building a distribution and a retail chain, retail presence. And today we have about 130 retail stores of our own.
Wow.
Wherein you can go in and buy a refurbished product, have a look and feel of it, and then make the decision. We believe that ultimately this business will grow digitally, but I think the step that we have to maneuver is building that trust by by offline presence first, and then once the trust is built, you can expect customers to come online and start buying from you. But it's a journey, and I think we are not very far from it. Within the next 12 to 24 months, we believe that the market is going to evolve. People have already started talking about refurbished products. And if you go back 3 years, nobody knew the word refurbished. So I think we are there, but it's still going to take some time where physical presence is important. So we are doubling down. I think our next 12-month target is to open another 120, 130 stores and take this number to 260, 270 stores. So we are going step at a time, offline and then digital.
Super. I think this is fascinating, building a playbook for refurbished. And my sense is that it'll open up a lot of categories in a country like ours. And of course, in the end, contributing to the circular economy. And India has a real
Yes.
chance there. Mandeep, let me talk about one of the hardest phases perhaps for Cashify, demonetization, something that you've often said almost killed the company. And how did you how did you navigate that? Uh, what what turned out after demonetization? Did you make any major changes to how you work?
It's quite amusing. The day that happened, and the moment I heard it, I was very very happy. That finally there's a positive change. Uh, we used to think that a lot of our competition is the unorganized market, who don't have to pay taxes, who do everything in a shady manner. So I thought, okay, great, there's going to be a level playing field. Elated. Next day, it dawned on me that, okay, all that is great, but there's no money in the market. Now, just imagine a company whose name is Cashify. There's cash in our name. And we used to promote that, okay, sell your phone and get cash. Now, there's no cash. Okay, and 78 to 80% of our customers were actually opting for cash in hand before that night. And we had a big dilemma now how to navigate that. There were two aspects. One, how do we convince people going forward that Cashify will be able to give you money in the alternate forms? It's not cash. The second was the devices that we buy, we had to sell them somewhere. A lot of people ask me, okay, Mandeep, great, Cashify buys the devices. What do you do with them? Of course, we refurbish and sell them. We're not going to keep stashing those devices somewhere. Now, the immediate threat was that we had a huge pile of inventory lying in our warehouses, and there's no buyer in the market. Because imagine, if you don't have money, what do? You buy, food to eat. You buy basic necessities. Mobile phones become the last priority, although it is also an essential commodity today. But people won't choose to buy a mobile phone at that point. So that was a big challenge. And for almost a month and a half, suddenly the demand side of our business became zero. And you have expenses, as a founder, you need to keep the ball rolling. You have fixed expenses that you just can't do away with. And incidentally, we were at a stage, we were also trying to raise capital at that point. So it was a double whammy that suddenly all the term sheets had vanished. All the investor, wallets were shut. Nobody knew which side the camel would sit. So we were in a bad state. But I think what we knew was it is a positive step from the fact that at least now we don't have to manage cash. So a lot of our, operations was very difficult because we had to dole out cash to customers. So all our riders used to carry cash. We had to make, frequent visits to ATM. So all of that would stop. So there is a lot of operational efficiency that would come in. Okay. So we knew that at least it's good for business in the long term. If we survive these 2-3 months, hopefully we will be able to solve for it. And thankfully, what happened after that is a lot of digital adoption happened. A lot of people, who did not have a smartphone wanted to buy a smartphone because you could only do payments via, the wallets and digital, formats. So a lot of that happened. And after an initial lull of 1.5 months or 2 months, we started seeing the demand come back up. And actually demand was much, much larger than what we could have anticipated because everybody now wanted to use a wallet for transactions. So it was a tough time. It was, given that we had a very little runway, we were raising capital and suddenly the demand side vanished and we were sitting with inventory. And, smartphone is not an appreciating commodity anyways. Every day it's lying with you, the value decreases. So we were looking at, something where we did not know where it's going to go. But thankfully, things came back in 2 months and we survived.
Wow, what a story. And I think there's a book in there somewhere. So you've done everything, right? You've done pivots. You've built a category. You're still growing the category. I think you're building a playbook for a lot of other categories here. You've raised lots of money and probably you'll raise a lot more. What are things that stand out as learnings as a founder for you, Mandeep? What are things that probably are 2-3 massive takeaways if you were to do this all over again, or if you were to sit down with a fellow founder and tell them, look, here are 3 things I want to tell you?
I think, if I go back 15 years, there are the basics which everybody will tell you that, find a great team, find a co-founder that, you can gel with, work with, because that's important. This journey is very lonely if you try to do it alone, and there would be times when you would just want to pull the plug multiple times. So having someone by your side is important. So having a great founder is very important, and I'm thankful that I have two really good great founders. But these are basics. Everybody would tell you. I think my biggest learning is that we always think, the scale at which we think about while we are building our businesses is a function of our growing up years. We all, grow up in a certain kind of setup. And we all are limited by the scale that we can think of what we see around us. And I think that's something that's very, very important for founders to realize and understand, that you have to think beyond. And I remember in 2008 9, we did not even know the word venture capital. We did not think that VCs exist. For us, we'd always seen that if you want to build something, go to a bank will give you a loan. And the amount of loan that you're going to get is, what you can actually go and ask them for, or what your business plans are. And I think we realize a lot of, the middle class generation, the middle class people who've built businesses have always, thought of smaller outcomes. And if somebody had told me back then that you can think of $1 billion enterprise, all you need to do is just think large and go to a venture capital guy and show them a vision, you may get the money. I think the ball would have been really different. The way we would have, approached, how we built our career would be very different. Back then, I think I remember just thinking of 100 crore top line business was wow. But today, now when I think about it, 100 crore business, of course, it's large. A lot of people, build successful 100 crore businesses and happy with it. But you should think of multi-billion dollar businesses. And I think that's one thing that I want to, give as an advice to everyone who wants to start. Just don't limit your thoughts around scale by what you see around you in your local setup. Think beyond. If you think 10, just dare to think about 100 or 1,000. And I've seen that up close with our counterparts in China. The first time we visited a similar business in China, they were doing 20x of what we were doing at that point. And that just opened our eyes, because, when we were thinking about our business planning, we were like, if we do 10x, wow, we've built a great company. But here is a company who's doing 20x right now. So you need to think larger, bigger. So that is one thing that I want to, give as an advice to everyone, that, we need to think large. Capital is available. It is available. You just have to, knock on the right doors and you'll get it.
I think all of us wish we could go back in time and make better decisions with the knowledge we have now. However, while time travel may not be possible currently, Dell for Startups helps startups reach their goals and defines new routes for their success. With Dell's core purpose of creating technologies that drive human progress, they help startups in India accelerate their digital journey and solve some of the biggest challenges in the country. Let's head back to Startup Dugout by Dell Technologies to find out more about Mandeep Manocha, what he learned from his obstacles, and his plans for the future. Mandeep, this brings me to my next question, which is, and you mentioned growing up years and founder make companies, but I'm always curious what made the founder. And so walk us through a little bit about your own journey. What are the events that made you? Where did you grow up? A little bit of your own personal space and, situations that made you.
Well, I think really going back to formative years, I think I come from a family where both parents were working and I had a little sister. So very early on, the sense of, maturity just came in, that you need to take care of the household or your younger sibling when the parents are not around. And when I look back, I think that was one of the most important, educations that I got from the family circumstance or setup, that you got to be independent. And you have to fend for yourself or for the the larger part of the day, and that's something that created who I am today in terms of being very, very independent from day one. The second thing is, I always my father made sure that I'm surrounded by people who are some way associated with businesses. Now I remember him taking me to many of his friends who are in businesses. Making me sit in business meetings while I was in school. And very early on, I realized when I reached a business school that the terms that these guys are teaching us right now is something that I had heard like while growing up. So when I look back, I think those are very important lessons that were taught growing up. exposure to businesses, exposure to how you build large thinking processes is what I got from there. And when I reached college, the kind of friends that I had, we used to, at night discuss about business plans, atrocious business plans of hundreds of crores, while we had not even a few thousand rupees in our pocket. But we loved chatting about it, and I think that's what built, the thought process that okay, we need to, or I need to build something of my own at some point. And the other thing that I mentioned, that having an exposure to scrap yards, which instilled the sense of recycling, uh, giving me exposure that waste is not waste, it's a resource, and not a lot of people think of waste as a resource. And that those were a few of the growing up nuances. But I think I really enjoyed growing up in a very small town called Faridabad, which is right next to Delhi. And yeah, that's about it.
Fascinating. I think, how the dots connect in hindsight and
Yeah,
how
yeah,
everything has a purpose in your life. And
yeah.
amazing. And this brings me to my next question and my last question on this chat, Mandeep. You've clearly created a category company, and I think the companies that create categories also create ecosystems. They germinate a lot of ideas in other people, and clearly, you guys are making a massive contribution to the circular economy, to the larger mission of climate change. Um, Walk us through what lies ahead, especially what role do you see Cashify playing in this larger ecosystem of environment and climate
Sure,
change?
sure. I think the first step for us is making sure that all the devices which are lying unused in people's homes to come out and be part of the circular economy. And as per our estimates, about 80-85% of devices which can potentially be brought out and reused again are just lying in people's drawers. So I think the first step that we've identified is that we need to educate people that you need to bring those devices out, because otherwise we are just going to put more pressure on the environment and extract more resources to create new stuff. So let's reuse whatever is lying with us, extend the life cycle as much as possible. Ultimately, everything needs to be recycled. Now, as Cashify, we have plans of also getting into recycling at some stage, because we believe that whatever we bring out from the drawers, extend life and refurbish them and sell them, but still there would be an end of life. But for the next 1 or 2 years, 3 years, we'll focus on bringing these devices out. And post that, we also want to set up a recycling setup of our own, because we would ultimately know where we've sold these devices, who are the customers, and we can reach out to them and collect those devices back and recycle them responsibly. I think we need, as a society, we need to be very, very cognizant of the fact that we are wasting a lot of resources. We are consuming a lot, but one thing I learned very early on, that you can't ask people to stop consuming. They will consume, but you need to change the way that people consume. And there are a lot of design hacks, product hacks through which you can actually influence the consumption pattern without telling them that you should stop consuming. Because trust me, everybody is entitled to a good way of life and people will consume. And a very, an example which is closest to my heart when I think about the design led approach of changing consumption is how, some of the toothpaste brands change how we consume the amount of toothpaste that we consume every day. They just change the size of the nozzle through which we squeeze out the toothpaste. It's such a simple way of just increasing how you have to increase the consumption. But if you think about these kind of approaches in design to reduce consumption as well, it's possible. And I think that's how we want to impart that kind of philosophy in our company, staying true to recycling from that perspective. So we will make sure that most of the devices come out, and we will invest heavily in recycling going forward.
Wonderful. More power to you, Mandeep, and more power to Cashify, and keep building this up. We all need it, and we have only one planet to live on. It's been
Absolutely.
wonderful chatting with you, and thank you for joining us. That was Mandeep Manocha, co founder and CEO of Cashify, on Startup Dugout by Dell Technologies. Tune in next week for more insights, stories of overcoming challenges, and of course, never giving up. If you are an entrepreneur that's forging your path with your dreams, Dell for Startups can help you in your digital journey and transformation. For more details, check out the links in the episode description.